Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. We have a special episode for you this week. We have a special guest on the show, Paul Turner. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
And Paul and I attended the Ashland Film Festival this year, along with actually Brad Wortman, one of our regular volunteers here on Real Film Snobs, who unfortunately couldn't be with us here tonight. But Brad and Paul are regular, I guess that's sort of regular now, Ashland Film Festival correspondents.
Only for the last 10 years.
Yes, only for the last 10 years. So they've been going for 10 years. I went for the first time this year because you guys both kept raving about it. And
we were delighted to have you.
Yes, and convinced me to go. So I was really excited to get to check out this called the Ashland Independent Film Festival. It goes for 5 days in downtown Ashland primarily. It was a wonderful experience. So we're going to launch right into, we each picked our top 3 movies that we want to talk about from the festival, and Brian's going to look interested. That's his job today.
I do that every week.
Yes. So we'll go to my first movie, which is Midnight Traveler. And this is a film made by and about the Afghanistan filmmaker Hassan Fazili, and I apologize if I'm butchering his name, and his family. And they're forced to flee Afghanistan after the Taliban puts a price on his head for making a documentary that they didn't agree with. So the film follows his family as they try to seek asylum somewhere in Europe. But what makes this movie particularly notable and special is that the family documents everything they're going through on their phones. That's all they have. Sometimes they're sleeping in the middle of a forest in Bulgaria. Sometimes they're hiding out in Turkey. And so they try the legal asylum process at the beginning of the film, and we see the mounds of paperwork and all the things they're denied by all the countries that they seek asylum to. So then they decide to hire people to kind of get them into Europe to try to make their case actually in the country. So the film is shot over a series of years, actually, while they go through this process. So it sounds really harrowing and heavy, but what makes it actually delightful is that this family, they're like characters in a movie that you love, that you don't want to stop watching, particularly his 2 young daughters. He has so much at stake with her, with having these 2 young girls that he has to raise and protect, and knowing what they came from and what their fate would have been if they had stayed in Afghanistan. It also, as you grow to love them and to like them as people, it makes it that much more powerful. So this was my favorite film that I saw at the festival. It was a one-time only, one showing screening, and I think you didn't get to see this one. Is that right, Paul?
No.
Yeah, so luckily I think it's supposed to come to public television at some point, so hopefully people will get to check it out, because it was, yeah, it had me floored after I saw it. It was the one that
3.5 stars. Is that what I normally do? Oh no,
yeah,
oh, no.
Okay.
I didn't see this one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, okay, so Paul, we'll go on to your first pick.
My first pick is Hail Satan with a question mark. Hail Satan. It's a lovely documentary by Penny Lane, who had done a film in 2012 called Nuts. And that film, which kind of gives you an idea of her aesthetic, was a film about a doctor in the early part of the last century that professed to claim cure impotence by putting goat testicles into men who normally have that problem. And she made a documentary about that, which was simply delightful. You had never been in an auditorium where all the men were crossing their legs at the same time. So this kind of gives you an idea of how she sees the world. So imagine having that aspect and then tackling a topic like the Satanic Temple. The Satanic Temple is a organization that started off with 3 people who were kind of having a bit of a joke, and it now has 50,000 members. And this is basically a broad look at how this happened. It's important to note that this is not an anti-Christian film. What it is it's about the polarity that we need. That's not right. Plural. What's the
Pluralism?
Plurality? Moving right along, and quickly, I might add. It's we are not a Christian nation, regardless of what the current mindset seems to be, and they are about making religion plural in this country. So if you're going to have the 10 Commandments on the courthouse steps, they're going to put a statue of the goat god next to the 10 Commandments. And I'm struggling to remember the name of that particular god, so I'm just going to move right along
They
here.
mentioned the name of it several times in the movie. I did see this one as well, and I don't remember either. But
Right.
I have to say, the bronze statue that they have made of the goat god with the two children looking up at him adoringly is quite something. It was actually pretty kind of gorgeous as a statue. I mean, not the content
Yes.
necessarily. It's a goat, you know.
Yes, it's a goat with big horns and children. But it's 8 feet tall, and
Holy smokes.
as it were, and it weighs, I think it's at several tons. And they're pushing through the legislation and trying to get this put on the same grounds as the Ten Commandments. And this is kind of the gist of this. This is kind of what this is all about. You think that, when you think of the Satanic Temple, you think of anti-Christian. It's not anti-Christian, it's pro-inclusiveness. And it's a nonviolent organization, which a lot of people have trouble with. One of the things that happened when this group, the Satanic Temple, grew is that they lost a lot of the control that they thought they were going to have, and they actually had to dismember, that's a funny way to put it. Members who they no longer wanted part of their organization had to be dismembered. And they would say, I have a certain amount of pride of having been fired from the Satanic Temple. But they would profess violence, and this is it's an anti-violent organization. They are a 501c3, and they are to encourage benevolence and empathy among all people.
Yeah, that's their mission statement, yeah.
That's their mission. Not too scary.
Yeah.
And doing the research for this, I was reading other reviews, and adjective I liked was they're mischievous.
Yes.
Because they have way too much fun. They appear not to take themselves too seriously. The dude who's running the thing is, where's his name? Lucien Graves. And he is very enigmatic. You look at him and you go, yeah, this dude's a Satanist, because he's got the foggy eye and he's smirking all the time.
Right.
But he is perhaps one of the most eloquent people I have seen around this issue, and he speaks very clearly and very well, unlike me.
He's very intelligent. You get that across.
This guy has a couple brain cells to rub together, and but he has a sense of humor about it, and he's very centered about what's happening. When everything's breaking loose and he's getting a lot of attention, they'll say, so are you having fun yet? And he'll stop and he'll say, no, not really. And you realize that he isn't in this for the glamour. He's in this to try.
He believes in it.
He believes in it. He's trying to make it so that this is an all-encompassing.
Yeah. And it's an important issue because there are other organizations that fight for separation of church and state, but because under the umbrella of worshiping Satan, they can be registered as a religious organization. That means they can enter into the conversation, like things like the Ten Commandments in front of the state capitol building in, I think it was Arkansas, where they can say, well, if Hindus, Muslims should be able to have anything they want here, and we have our statue, it's ready to go. So they're able to kind of enter that debate in a different way than a regular nonprofit that's fighting, because that's really what a lot of what they're about is separation of church and state. Although they go beyond that. There's the, I can't remember his name right now, but they do the thing to the one group, those super right-wing fundamentalists that always protest at every...
that was my favorite part of the film.
That was my favorite part of the film as well. They go to his mother's grave and...
Fred Phelps of
yes, that's his name.
Westboro Baptist Church, who is known to go to
Very well known, yeah.
funerals of soldiers with the God Hates Fags signage. They went to his mother's grave in the spirit of baptism. Mormons believe that after death, people can be baptized. So they went to Fred Phelps' mother's grave and baptized her into homosexuality.
Yes, in full parade. Yeah, they did a full thing about
horns
it. Yeah.
and all. It was a thing of beauty, and I'll leave the last part out because
Yes, probably.
we can't say that. But anyway,
Yeah, it's a great film. I highly recommend it as well. Paul wanted the honor of getting to talk about that one, so it should be coming to local art. It's opening now at
it'll
local
be opening
theaters.
at the Dark Side in the next couple of weeks in
Right.
Corvallis, Oregon.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, I'm going.
Yeah, so we'll move on to my next pick, which is International Falls, directed by Amber McGinnis. This is a movie that kind of really really caught me by surprise. I had no idea what it was about before I went and saw it. And it's about a woman who works at a hotel in a small town, the small town of International Falls, who dreams of becoming a comic and finds her life completely changed when she meets a burned out touring comedian. The film stars Rachel Harris as Dee and Rob Hubel as Tim, and they're real life comedians. But what's interesting about this film, I would say it is a comedy, but it's a dark comedy. It's not a ha-ha, chuckle fest type comedy. It's got a lot of dark elements to it. Because you know, you think it's a two movie starring comedians, so I thought maybe it was going to be just zany. And it's actually a pretty dark little movie. And what I loved about it, not only did they capture the feeling of the town and the atmosphere of this very kind of small, very cold place, and there's lots of jokes about the cold that he has that are actually quite funny. But this idea of this woman who's had this very ordinary life. She works at a hotel, she's got kids, husband, she's kind of just done the conventional things, and underneath her is this kind of like wicked spirit waiting to get out, where she has these jokes, you know. She's fascinated. So the comedians that come to her hotel, who are kind of I don't even know if you'd call them C-level comedians, the ones doing those kind of tours that, you know, appear in the smaller clubs and the hotels and do the conventions. You know, she sees these people, and she's been honing her craft secretly herself, and meeting this person who's kind of done with comedy kind of helps to propel her to achieve her dreams. So I really was surprised where this one went. I was, you know, a lot of films, particularly fictional films at independent film festivals, are often, I would say the acting is often a little difficult. That would be the word I would use. Yes.
Bad.
And there you go, Brian. Bad. Sometimes bad. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is bad, quite honestly, or, you know, or very uneven. Like someone will be good, but another actor will be terrible. This film was really well acted, and that's what stood out to me. I mean, if I had seen this at Salem Cinema or the Dark Side or anywhere, I wouldn't have known it was a super low budget indie film based on the quality of the filmmaking and the actors. So. Yeah, did you see it?
I did. It was I enjoyed it. The isolation of the environment in this teeny little town, and then the isolation within the isolation was what I think sparked her to move outside of that and take a chance at doing stand-up comedy. I also really enjoyed it. The story arc is somewhat predictable, but totally worth the ride.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I did. And I kind of knew where it was going, but I was along with it because I liked the character so much. And it kept it small, which you should do when you have this kind of, you get two really good actors, you put them in a room and watch something neat happen. So this one is one, I'm not sure if it will open anywhere near you at all. It does have a professional poster online, so that's a good sign.
Why do you keep saying that?
Because the poster, as the audience can see from Midnight Traveler, was literally a photo. They didn't have a professional poster, so we had to take a photo from the movie and make it into a poster. So that's how independent some of these films are.
Wow, how hard is it just to, you know, make a poster?
Apparently more difficult than you think. Okay,
yeah.
So we'll move on to your next pick, keeping with our theme here.
Keeping with our theme, Satan, there you are, Satan and Adam. Satan and Adam, documentary, interestingly enough, about music, about musicians. Imagine, if you will, Harlem back in the day, a black musician playing guitar on the street in Harlem, and a skinny little white boy walks up and says, "Can I play harmonica with you?" And he does. And it takes about 13 seconds before they're looking at each other and realizing that they've created something. Did you see this as well?
I was with you, yeah.
That's right. That's right. You were there. So this I would say that the white and black is kind of an awful way to put it, but it is what this story is about. It's about the racial tension from that time and how they overcame it in order to create this musical duo, as it were. Adam Gusau was the young man who approached the street musician. He ended up being a professor in music and other studies, and he took the chance, and he walked up to this guy. And so Satan is the street musician, and it's actually Sterling McGee, who has played with Herbie Hancock, George Benson, and several other artists that he's performed with. So this guy obviously knows what the heck he's doing. He knows his way around a guitar, and he sings very well, and he acquired the name Satan just as a street name. And there's a story there that plays itself out. So these two strange creatures get together. The Adam, I would say, is probably on the spectrum, judging by the way he interacts with other people or doesn't. And then you have someone who's completely the opposite, which is Satan, who is very gregarious, open to anyone, will speak to anyone. So the personality types make an interesting mix as well. And the music is awesome. It's blues. And they're both extremely good. So things happen, they go on tour, and then things stop happening. And Sterling McGee, his health starts to degrade, and then he falls off the face of the earth. So the story continues, and Adam goes to find Satan, and they work together, and the power of music is kind of what brings them back together again. This documentary covers about 23 years.
Yeah, that's incredible.
In the lives of both these people.
Yeah.
And it of course works with archival footage. They didn't start shooting it 23 years ago. But I did not expect it to be so uplifting towards the end. I was in it for the tunes. The music sounded great, and the trailer was awesome. The way they made the movie, the way they put the sound out there. But the humanity of it at the end is what I ended up taking away and really enjoying the film.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Maybe not as much as you, but I did. And I hadn't heard of Sterling McGee, but I asked my husband, who teaches music, and he had, and he has an interesting story because he had worked with all these great musicians, and then like a lot of African American musicians that time period got pretty, what's the word? I'm trying to think of a nice word to say. Well, I'll just say it, screwed over by the record companies, didn't get his royalties, and so then just said, you know what, forget it, I'm just going to go to the streets and be a street musician. But he's an amazing guitar player. He is, and so he ends up influencing. There's a scene in the movie, which at first I was like, oh, do they have to justify by showing someone more famous? Because they show The Edge. U2 is recording their album in the 80s, and they see The Edge just walking to the street and see this guitar player, and it ends up inspiring, I believe, the song Angel of Harlem, and he has these, these
Rattle
moments.
and Hum album, yeah.
Right, from the Rattle and Hum album, and there's part of Sterling McGee's playing in I believe in the album, or maybe in the video.
Movie.
Well, he's credited. He's credited in the album.
Yeah.
And something that struck me about that is how articulate The Edge was from the U2. He spoke very eloquently and very precisely about music and the relevance to what they do.
Right.
And I thought that was a really nice thing in this movie, which is about these two people, and they bring in someone who is able to shine an even more focused light on the industry as someone who's made it.
Right. Yeah, which was really powerful. Yeah. So yeah, I could definitely recommend it, and it is, I believe, also showing locally right now as well.
Yes.
So we'll move on to, I think this is my last pick, yes. Sticking with our theme of the show, unintentional theme, I should say, my next movie is another comedy. I went for a lot of comedies. Original Sin, directed by Gene Lee. And this one is about a frustrated housewife, her extremely uptight husband, and an artist, and they form a very unlikely trio over one afternoon in their house. This is one where I almost don't want to give it away, but then I also think, I don't know if anyone will ever see this film. We saw the late showing of this, and I did not know what to expect going in. It was really interesting. It's a movie made with just 3 actors, and another one very well acted. So it's in Spanish. The cast is very diverse. They did during the talkback, which is one of the great things about going to film festivals, is you get to hear from the actors. They're from Paraguay, Spain, and Mexico. It's cited as a Paraguay production, but it was actually filmed in LA, which is kind of crazy. The director, Gene Lee, does not speak Spanish at all, but directed the whole cast.
I did not know that.
Yeah, regardless.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, the director does not speak Spanish, but she was very comfortable apparently directing this cast and this story, and co-wrote the story. It's a comedy, but it's another one that's has a dark edge, and it has these elements of course, there is an element of it that's about the wife is frustrated. Her husband is uptight, and a lot of it goes back to his childhood. And she's trying to seek some sort of reconciliation with him or try to figure out what's going on. She meets this artist who's incredibly handsome, and he kind of frees her sexually a bit. And her husband gets involved. And her husband shows up while they're in the middle of doing something, and he gets very, very upset.
As it were.
But then he starts to, it just goes off the rails. And you know what I liked about this movie is I had absolutely no idea where it was going.
That's exactly right. That was one of the best
Yes.
things about it. And the heroes.
I'm even having trouble talking about it because I'm like.
The heroes and the way the movie wrapped up, you did not see that coming either.
Oh, no, no, no.
And the tension builds and the tension builds, kind of like the relationship between the woman and the artist, and the tension and then the tension and then it's. I thought that there was a very pronounced feminist attitude about this, where the woman was empowered, and whether people perceive this or not, she was running the show. It was her actions, it was her feelings, and it was her desires that was directing, the way things went, the progression, and I enjoyed that.
And the men look very silly. I mean, at one point towards the beginning, he starts playing, is it badminton? What are they playing?
Badminton, yeah.
Yes. That's how they were going to fight, and then he's like, instead he challenges them to a game of badminton. And she's standing there like, okay, I want to talk about what's going on and what you just walked in on me with another man, and instead you're going to challenge him to a game of badminton. It has this very absurd, it has a very absurdist humor,
Yes.
which I really appreciated.
After he takes him into his bedroom and dresses him, because he
Right.
was naked when
they came in, yeah, and
when
he
he
goes, well, you
walked
need
in.
clothes. So then he dresses him in his own clothes, the husband's wardrobe.
Isn't that a documentary?
No. It's very absurdist.
Sounds like my neighborhood.
It's great. It's great humor. This is one that I don't know. Are you going to pick it up at your theater? Probably
if
not.
it gets distribution, I would love to. because
doesn't distribute it, I assume,
I
then,
really
yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, I would say, but for someone who watches a lot of films and, unlike international films where I knew where it was going, but I loved it anyway. I love a film where about halfway through I thought, I really don't know where this is going to go. And I enjoyed that, so. Okay, so we have one more film from you.
We do?
Yes.
Oh,
Don't look surprised. You panicked me for a second, Paul.
I'm going to make up a film. I don't have to, because I do have another film. This film is Phoenix, Oregon. Maybe you've heard of it. It's Phoenix is, of course, in Oregon, among other places. This is a hometown movie, and these normally scare the hell out of me. When I go to film festivals, and I often am pegged as an exhibitor, which is someone who shows movies, which means that I get a lot of attention I don't want.
Right.
Right, and this is why I take Brad.
Oh, poor Brad. Come on. That's me.
No, I
talk to
don't.
Brad.
I don't mean that way. Yeah, exactly. Brad loves this. So
Oh, they
Brad-
talk to Brad. I
I
thought
can
you were
have-
trying
I
to
can-
say they scare Brad off. I'm like,
No,
that's
no, no, no.
adorable.
Brad scares people off.
No, no.
I don't know what he
Brad
meant.
loves to talk,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's like Brad.
You can talk to them about my film.
But yeah,
My
but
theater,
This,
yeah.
but this is what happens: is that I get approached. You need to play my movie. It's the best thing in the world. And this is a hometown movie, and the hometown being Ashland. And so we've been going to Ashland for a long time. I know a lot of people there. Oh, this is my friend. They made a movie. We're all going to get together and talk about it. And it's like, oh, good. And and if they're watching this, sorry. But this was one time where it was okay. I went to see this movie. I was apprehensive because I didn't know what to expect, and I was there with friends.
All of Ashland was pretty much there. It was in the huge. It was a packed house.
It was
yeah.
a packed house,
Yeah.
and
Hometown favorite.
And so I was approached before this to play it, and I gave it one day. I got a hold of my manager. I said, let's give this thing one day so I can say I'm playing it, and they'll leave me the hell alone, okay? And so we gave them one day. And then I watched the movie, and I realized everyone's standing, and it's like, okay, I'm not getting away with one day, so we're going to probably end up giving it 2 weeks. This kind of sets up the notion that I was not prepared to like this movie. I was just going to try to do something with it and get the hell out of the way so I could play movies I liked. Well, I ended up liking it, and there is nothing surprising about the movie. Did you see this?
Yes.
Okay, there's nothing surprising about the movie. It's about pizza, it's about bowling. They bring in a bunch of character actors. You've seen them all before, and they're good. character actors you've seen in movies like Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, Fame, Blood In, Blood Out, Napoleon Dynamite, Office Space, Veep, True Romance.
Yeah.
You're looking at these actors and you go, gosh, I know them from somewhere.
Right. Every single person that walked on the screen, I'm like, oh, I know him. He was in a bunch of stuff I've seen. I can't remember his name. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is
That's
what
good.
makes it delightful. And they're all, it was directed by...
Gary Lundgren. Correct?
Okay.
Sorry.
The director, just let them go. I have someone else. It doesn't matter. But the director basically got out of their way. And that's something that is really great. And character actors who do multiple variations of themselves know what they're doing for the most part. And this director did a great job of getting them out of their way. And it's a little bit of Big Night, a little bit of Kingpin, and they do it well. It is a homespun film. It is not as polished as something that you'll see from a lot of the studios. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I believe they're traveling around with the film, the cast. I know it's going to be showing here in Salem with the cast, and apparently it's going to also be showing at the Dark Side. So that's really neat. I did like it. I know I had, it's like a cutesy indie movie, which I sometimes have problems with, like Little Miss Sunshine or something, where it's very feel-good. And I don't always like those kind of movies. James LaGrosse is the star of it, and Lisa Edelstein, who I've seen in a ton of movies, and I really like her as an actress. Actually, the surprise for me of the film was Jesse Borrego, who played Carlos, who I thought was quite good, and I hadn't really seen him in a lot. But I thought it was enjoyable. I think it's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
I think people will like it because it's a comedy. It's feel good. It's got a lot of Oregon. It's obviously filmed in Oregon. But it's got a lot of Oregon references.
People like it, but you're not so much.
Yeah, those people, regular people, they like it. But it's got all these references to craft beer and Oregon things, organic, this and that. So that was nice.
Yeah, and on top of, pull all that aside, and it's just a really enjoyable film. And you're right, it is very indie, and some people are going to make comments about that, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Little Miss Sunshine rocked, by the way.
Oh, you and Brian both like that movie. It's so predictable. Okay. Well, we've got to wrap up. Thank you to Paul Turner, owner, proprietor of the Dark Side Cinema and our Ashland Film Festival correspondent. Thank you to my lovely co-host for sitting here. As always, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on our website at realfilmsnobs.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. We are on CCTV here in Salem, Scan TV in Silverton, and CAM, CAM TV in Corvallis. As always, have a great day and great movies.